Coming up, homegrown vaccine in demand. QazVac can be sent to Afghanistan in the near future. The national census in Kazakhstan is coming to an end. Details in the material of our correspondent. Letters of Kazakh Khans in old maps. An exhibition of rare books and manuscripts has opened in the capital. Kazakh Prime Minister Askar Mamin instructed to strengthen epidemiological control at the state border and accelerate COVID-19 vaccinations. According to him, there had been a decline in immunization rates in the country. Thus, while the first dose of the vaccine was administered to over 8.2 million people, the second dose was received by slightly more than 7 million Kazakh citizens. I am instructing the governors of Mangostau, West Kazakhstan, Kostanay, and Akhmala regions and the mayor of Nur-Sultan to take personal control and ensure the required vaccination coverage. The Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Information and Social Development should continue educating the population about the importance of vaccination and revaccination, stressing that the only way to stay healthy is to get a coronavirus vaccine. Kazakh Health Minister Alexei Tsoy announced an updated coronavirus incidence forecast for the coming month. According to him, in a pessimistic scenario, the country will be detecting an average of up to 1,800 new infections per day, while under the optimistic scenario, the daily COVID-19 cases could reach up to 1,500.
В целом в Казахстане за последние 2 месяца заболеваемость снизилась в 4,5 раза.
Overall, in the past 2 months, the infection rate in Kazakhstan has decreased 4.5 times and the death rate 4.8 times. Since August 1st, the country has seen a decline in the occupancy rate of infectious diseases beds from 56 to 37% and of ICU beds from 45 to 30%. More than 30,000 beds remain in reserve. In view of the stabilization of the epidemic situation, temporary COVID-19 hospitals continue to get closed. A homegrown QazVac vaccine might be sent to Afghanistan, stated Kazakh Minister of Foreign Affairs Mukhtar Tlyuberdi. The Afghan side also requested humanitarian aid in the form of the Kazakh QazVac vaccine supply. This issue is being reviewed and the decision will be made by the government. Tlyuberdi also said that 5,000 tons of flour had already been delivered to the Islamic country as humanitarian cargo. According to Kazakh Agriculture Ministry, in September and October, over 60,000 tons of flour and more than 15,000 tons of grain were shipped to Afghanistan. In the future, supplies will only increase. Seven people were killed and another 140 injured during the protests against the seizure of power in Sudan, Reuters reported. Recently, Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok, as well as most of the cabinet members, was detained by the military. Sudan's Sovereign Council Chief General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan took responsibility for all actions. He also declared a state of emergency in the country. This is the second attempt by the army to take power. They said they had been forced to take such a step because of the confrontation between politicians and calls for violence. Disagreements between the military and civilian authorities of the Sudan have continued since 2019. The greenhouse gas concentrations have reached records level. This is stated in the report of the UN's World Meteorological Organization. Presently, the negative trend continues. The economic downturn caused by the coronavirus pandemic and the temporary reduction in emissions did not have a noticeable effect on the concentration of greenhouse gases and their growth rates. Experts note that this means not only an increase in temperature but also a rise in sea levels, ocean acidification, and an increase in extreme weather events. At the current rate of increase in GCG concentrations, we will see a temperature increase by the end of this century far in excess of the Paris Agreement targets of 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. We are way off track. The US oil has gone up to its peak. For example, the price of WTI, which last year stood at $35 a barrel, has now surpassed $85. The rise in oil prices has also boosted the cost of gasoline. For example, in the US, on average, a gallon of gasoline costs more than $3. Experts say this is the highest figure in 7 years. The highest oil prices are in California, according to regulators. The growing demand for gasoline and the decision of the OPEC Plus countries will have a direct impact on fuel costs, analysts say. In the first 7 months of this year, the volume of trade between Kazakhstan and Hungary reached $79 million. To date, this European state is a key partner of Kazakhstan in Eastern Europe. According to the Ministry of National Economy, Hungary has invested $226 million in the domestic economy in the last 10 years alone. There are 29 companies with Hungarian capital and 41 joint ventures in the country. Kazakhstan and Hungary are in constant dialogue on expanding economic cooperation. Thus, following a business forum held in Nur-Sultan, the parties concluded 8 partnership agreements. This will give new impetus to economic cooperation between the two countries.
For instance, there was signed for an agreement in the agricultural sector. A great and a big Hungarian agricultural company make an agreement, our Kazakh partners, and of course in the pharmaceutical sector, because the pharmaceutical sectors from Hungary doubled the quantity of the export in 2020. So these agreements help us and support the activity, and of course a good sign for other businessmen who are wait and see. I think the vaccination program in Kazakhstan and also in Hungary create a more moderate situation for the economy, and we can make more business.
In Kazakhstan, the share of processing enterprises that use digital technologies will be increased by almost a quarter in the next 4 years. The work will be carried out as part of the implementation of the national project Sustainable Economic Growth aimed at the welfare of Kazakh citizens. It prescribes a separate area, industrial and innovative. Its purpose is to increase the production of competitive products in the country that are in demand in the foreign market by 2025.
В рамках вот как раз-таки индустриально-инновационного направления предусмотрено мероприятие по развитию.
As part of the industrial and innovative area, measures are provided to develop and promote digital transformation in the industry. The corresponding necessary standards, digital standards that have not existed before, will be introduced. A number of standards have already been approved and introduced this year, precisely in the field of digitalization. Also, a register of digital solutions, including domestic ones, will be formed. These are digital developments which can be applied and implemented in production. The register has nearly 98 solutions to date.
Которые можно применять и внедрять на производстве. Порядка 98 решений на сегодняшний день имеется в реестре.
In general, Kazakhstan plans to attract more than 11 trillion tenge to the processing industry by 2025. These funds are expected to finance about 400 projects in the country.
Это совместные инвестиции.
These are joint investments, private and public. At the same time, it is worth noting that public investments are often the concessional lending, which means that cash is repayable. The introduction of these new projects will increase the volume of exports, since they are export-oriented. This is one of the key tasks in implementing projects.
Это одна из таких, скажем, ключевых, наверное, задач при реализации проектов.
According to experts, the development of digital industry will allow optimizing business processes, managing production remotely, and significantly increasing labor productivity. The future starts today. Under this name, the regular Nobel Fest has kicked off in Kazakhstan. For 4 days, everyone has a unique opportunity to listen to unique lecturers. The streams are open and available for all countries. The Nobel Fest is a large-scale and influential scientific and educational forum in Kazakhstan, Central Asia, and the Caucasus. The key topics of the panels this time are green reality, the age of innovation, economy for people, and professions of the future. According to preliminary estimates, over 70,000 listeners have already joined the streams. Among the speakers, there are such outstanding figures as world-famous historian and author of the best-selling book *Sapiens: A Brief History of Humankind*, Yuval Noah Harari, co-creator of the Apple voice assistant Luke Julia, researcher of cryptocurrencies Garrick Hillman, and many other famous persons.
Уникальность сегодняшнего мероприятия в том, что у нас не только теоретики, а такой сбалансированный.
The uniqueness of today's event is that we have not only theorists, but such a fusion of theorists and practitioners. I will not list. You all know the speakers. They are not only famous people in our region, but across the world. These are global leaders who have achieved outstanding results with their success. I have a big request to all residents of our country to actively participate and gain that knowledge, especially since the organizers hold this event free of charge.
и получить те знания. Тем более это мероприятие организаторы проводят бесплатно.
Almost 92% of Kazakh residents, and this is over 17 million people, took part in the national census. At the same time, 40.5% of respondents completed the survey online. This was announced by the head of the Bureau of National Statistics, Nur-Sultan Aydapkelov.
Санақтан өткендер саны бойынша Алматы қаласы көш бастап тұр. Мұнда санаққа қатысқандар қатары болған.
Almaty city is leading in passing the census. Here the number of survey participants totals 107.5%. Turkestan region took the second place and Jambal region the third. In these regions, 98.6% of the population took part in the survey.
Санақ сауалдарына жауап берді. Үшінші орында Жамбыл облысы тұр. Бұл аймақта да азаматтардың 98.6% немесе 1.129.000 адам санақтан өткен.
Residents of East Kazakhstan, Kazlorda, Jambal regions prefer to pass the census online. The respondents from Almaty, Shymkent and Almaty region basically took the census in the old-fashioned way, in the traditional format.
Бұған дейін біз Алматы облысының Балқаш ауданы мерзімнен бұрын сауалнама шараларын аяқтағанын айтып едік. Біртіндеп еліміздің өзге де аудандары санақты.
The census was completed ahead of schedule in Balkhash and Kerbulak districts of the Almaty region. Also, the poll ended in the Abay district of the East Kazakhstan region and in 8 districts of Pavlodar region.
Мәліметтер жинау жұмысы Шығыс Қазақстан облысы Абай ауданында аяқталды. Ал Павлодар облысының 8 бірдей ауданы санақ аясында сауалнама жүргізу шараларын бітірді.
Control round is planned to be held from November 1st to 7th. There is a shortage of experts in Kazakhstan who study ancient and rare manuscripts. This was discussed during the presentation of the exhibition The Kazakh State in Medieval Written Sources, dedicated to the 30th anniversary of Kazakhstan's independence. According to the domestic historian Tligen Sadykov, an analysis of valuable written sources of nomads found not only in the country but also abroad will shed light on the most unexplored pages of the history of the Great Steppe.
Мен айтар едім, бүгінгі таңда біз бұл бастамасы ғана. Әлі директтік жинаған материалды толық игере алмауымыз
I would say that this is just the beginning of the study of written sources. I think there are a couple of reasons why we haven't fully explored them yet. First, there is a shortage of scientists and researchers who can read the ancient language. These are the consequences of the Soviet past, when people studied only Russian and Cyrillic languages. The study of materials in Arabic, Persian, and Turkish is a great challenge for modern scientists. Secondly, many materials and manuscripts have not been fully preserved and have not survived to this day. Many materials are in a worn-out condition.
Құжаттардың бәрі бірдей деңгейде жеткен жоқ. Ішінде тозып жеткені бар.
The exposition presented a whole collection of ancient exhibits. These are rare books on history, as well as maps and letters of Kazakh Khans from the collection of the National Center for Manuscripts and Rare Books. The exhibition will run until the end of December.